The dust cloud on the horizon was the first sign of hope Sophia Miller had seen in days. She squinted against the harsh New Mexico Territory sun, wondering if her exhausted mind was playing tricks on her. But no, someone was definitely approaching her stranded wagon, and at this point, any human contact meant a chance at survival. "Children, stay close," she called to her brood, scattered around the broken-down wagon that had been their prison for 3 days now. The axle had snapped clean through just as they'd crossed the creek bed, leaving them marooned in this desolate stretch between nowhere and nothing. Little James, only 4 and perpetually curious, scrambled up from where he'd been poking at a horned toad. "Is it Indians, Mama?" he asked, eyes wide with the mixture of fear and excitement only a child could muster.
"No, darling.
Just a rider." Sophia smoothed down her dust-caked skirt, suddenly conscious of her appearance after days in the punishing elements. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, and her skin felt rough and red from wind and sun. "Mary, gather the younger ones." Mary, at 12 the eldest, immediately began herding her siblings. 10-year-old William, 8-year-old Elizabeth, and 6-year-old Sarah formed a wary line beside their mother, with James clutching Sophia's skirts. The rider approached at a steady pace, resolving from a distant speck into the clear figure of a man on horseback. Sophia's hand tightened instinctively on the small revolver hidden in the folds of her dress, a necessary precaution for a widow traveling alone with 5 children in 1871. As he drew closer, she could make out more details. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the easy posture of someone who'd spent most of his life on horseback. His clothes were dusty but not ragged, and the horse beneath him, a magnificent chestnut quarter horse, moved with the energy of an animal well cared for despite the harsh conditions. "Hello, the wagon," he called when he was within earshot, his voice carrying clear across the dry air. "Hello," Sophia returned cautiously, stepping slightly in front of her children. He slowed his approach, clearly reading her wariness. "Name's Owen Blackwood," he called, tipping his hat. "Seems like you folks might be in some trouble." The man pulled his horse to a stop about 20 feet from the wagon, giving her space. Up close, Sophia could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30 or so, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years outdoors and intelligent blue eyes that assessed the situation quickly. "We've broken an axle," she answered, deciding honesty was her best option. 3 days ago." 3 days? His eyebrows rose as he glanced at the children. "You've been out here that long with the little ones?" "We had water from the creek and food in our stores," Sophia said defensively. "I was hoping someone might pass by." "You're lucky I did. Not many take this route. I'm heading to my ranch about 15 miles west." Owen dismounted with the fluid grace of a lifetime horseman, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Mind if I take a look at your wagon, madam?" Sophia hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Please." Owen approached the wagon, crouching down to examine the broken axle. He whistled low. "Clean break. You've got no chance of moving this without a replacement." He stood, dusting his hands on his pants. "I don't suppose you have a spare?" "If I did, Mr. Blackwood, we wouldn't still be here," Sophia replied, a hint of dry humor creeping into her voice despite their predicament. The corner of his mouth quirked up. "Fair point, Mrs. Miller. Sophia Miller. And these are my children, Mary, William, Elizabeth, Sarah, and James. Pleased to meet you all," he said with a genuine smile, tipping his hat to the children who stared back with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "That's quite a brood to be traveling with alone, Mrs. Miller." "My husband died last winter," she said simply. "Pneumonia. We're heading to my sister's place near Santa Fe." Owen's expression softened. "I'm sorry for your loss." His eyes moved from her face to the broken wagon and back again. "Well, Mrs. Miller, I see 3 options. I can ride to my ranch and return with tools and a replacement axle that would take until tomorrow at least." I can try to rig something temporary to get you as far as my place.
Or,
Or, she prompted when he hesitated. Or you and your children could ride with me to my ranch now, and I could return for your belongings once you're settled safely. The proposition hung in the air between them. Sophia weighed her options. Trust this stranger or remain stranded with 5 increasingly hungry and restless children. The nearest town was at least 2 days' walk impossible with the little ones. Mary stepped forward, her young face serious. We can trust him, Mama, she said quietly. He has kind eyes. Sophia looked at Owen Blackwood more carefully. Despite his weathered appearance, there was something reassuring about him, a steadiness in his gaze and a patience in how he waited for her decision, not pushing or pressuring. We have quite a lot packed in that wagon, Mr. Blackwood, she said finally. Everything we own in the world. I understand that, Mrs. Miller. And I give you my word as a gentleman that I'll see your belongings safely to my ranch. But my first concern is getting you and these children out of this heat. James tugged at her skirt. Mama, I'm thirsty, he whispered, and that decided it. Very well, Mr. Blackwood. We accept your help. She straightened her shoulders. But I warn you, I'm an excellent shot. To her surprise, he grinned. I'd expect nothing less from a woman brave enough to cross this territory with 5 children. He turned toward his horse. Now, let's see about getting you all to safety before nightfall. The logistics of transporting 5 children and their mother on one horse proved challenging, but Owen was resourceful. He fashioned a makeshift second seat from blankets tied to his saddle, where Sophia could sit sideways holding James. Mary rode behind Owen, while he led the horse on foot with the 3 middle children walking alongside. It's not ideal, he admitted, but my ranch isn't far. We'll take it slow and rest when needed. The journey revealed a glimpse of the man who had come to their rescue. Owen was patient with the children's endless questions, firm but kind when William started complaining about the walk, and somehow produced peppermint sticks from his saddlebag that immediately elevated him to hero status among the younger ones. You seem experienced with children, Mr. Blackwood, Sophia observed during one of their brief rest stops. I helped raise my younger siblings after our parents died, he replied, helping little Sarah take a drink from his canteen. 5 of them, like your brood. All grown and gone now. And you never married? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Never found the right woman willing to put up with a stubborn rancher in the middle of nowhere, he said with a self-deprecating smile. Or maybe I was too busy building something worth offering to look properly. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, a sprawling ranch came into view. It was larger and more established than Sophia had expected, a substantial main house, a bunkhouse, several outbuildings, corrals, and what looked like good grazing land stretching into the distance. Welcome to Blackwood Ranch, Owen said, a note of pride in his voice. Been in my family for 20 years now, though I've expanded it some since taking over. It's impressive, Sophia admitted, taking in the neat, well-maintained property. As they approached, a middle-aged Mexican woman emerged from the main house, her expression shifting from curiosity to surprise. Señor Owen. What is this? She called. Rescued strays, Marisol, he called back with a grin. Broken wagon about 12 miles east. This is Mrs. Miller and her children. They'll be staying with us until I can fix their transportation. To Sophia's relief, Marisol's face broke into a warm smile. Bienvenidos. Come inside. The children must be hungry and tired. Within an hour, Sophia found herself seated at a large kitchen table, watching in amazement as her freshly washed children devoured a hearty meal of beans, cornbread, and stew. Marisol, who turned out to be the housekeeper and cook, clucked over them like a mother hen, insisting on second helpings for everyone. Your housekeeper is a treasure, Sophia said quietly to Owen, who sat across from her. Marisol has been with me for 8 years. Came with her husband, Miguel, he's my foreman. They're family now. He leaned back in his chair. We've got plenty of room here. The children can share the 2 spare bedrooms upstairs, and you can take my sister's old room. And what about our wagon? Our belongings? First thing tomorrow, Miguel and I will ride out with the wagon and some tools. We'll either fix it there, or bring everything back piece by piece. He studied her face. Try not to worry, Mrs. Miller. You're safe here. That night, after tucking her exhausted children into real beds for the first time in weeks, Sophia stood by the window of her borrowed bedroom. The moon cast silver light over the ranch, peaceful and secure in ways their journey had not been since leaving Kansas City. She wasn't naive enough to trust completely. Life had taught her harsh lessons about dependency, but as she watched a tall figure move across the yard toward the bunkhouse, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Morning arrived with the smell of coffee and bacon. Sophia dressed quickly in one of her 2 remaining dresses and found her way downstairs to discover her children already at the kitchen table, being entertained by Marisol's stories as they ate breakfast. Good morning, Owen greeted her from where he leaned against the doorframe, already dressed for riding. Sleep well? Better than I have in months, she admitted. Thank you. Miguel and I are heading out now to retrieve your wagon and belongings. We should be back by sundown. He hesitated. Marisol suggested the children might enjoy seeing the new foal in the barn today, if that meets with your approval. The genuine consideration for her authority as a parent touched Sophia. They would love that. After Owen departed with his foreman, a stocky, competent-looking man with a kind smile, Sophia found herself following Marisol's efficient lead, helping with household tasks that felt wonderfully normal after weeks on the trail. The children thrived under the attention, especially when Marisol's tour of the barn yielded not only the promised foal but also a litter of kittens that had James and Sarah entranced. How long have you known Mr. Blackwood? Sophia asked as she and Marisol hung laundry in the warm sunshine.
8 years, as I said.
He is a good man. Works hard. Too hard sometimes. Marisol pinned a sheet with practiced efficiency. He built this place from almost nothing. His father left debts, but Owen paid them all.
Honest man.
He lives here alone? Besides you and Miguel? And the ranch hands see. For men who help with the cattle. Good workers. Marisol gave her a shrewd look. You are worried about being here? Don't be. Owen Blackwood is a gentleman. Sophia felt her cheeks warm. I wasn't suggesting otherwise. Marisol smiled knowingly. This ranch needs children's laughter. It has been too quiet for too long. The day passed more pleasantly than Sophia could have anticipated. William and Elizabeth were fascinated by the ranch operations, trailing behind Marisol's teenage son, who showed them the chicken coops and how to collect eggs without getting pecked. Mary, ever responsible, insisted on helping with chores, while the younger ones alternated between naps and play in the shade of a large oak tree. By late afternoon, Sophia realized she had relaxed more fully than she had in months, perhaps years. The constant vigilance required of a widow with 5 children had eased in this place, where competent hands managed things without her having to oversee every detail. When she spotted 2 riders approaching, followed by her wagon moving slowly behind a team of horses, relief flooded through her. Owen had kept his word. She walked out to meet them, shading her eyes against the setting sun. Owen dismounted with a tired smile. One new axle, installed and tested. Your belongings are all there, though we repacked some things to balance the weight better. I don't know how to thank you, Sophia said, genuinely moved by the effort he'd made. No need. Anyone would do the same. But they both knew that wasn't true in this harsh territory. Over the next several days, a routine developed. Owen insisted the Millers stay until they were properly rested for their journey, and Sophia found herself unable to argue, partly because the children were thriving, and partly because she herself felt safer than she had since Thomas died. Owen proved to be not just a capable rancher, but a natural with children. He took time each day to teach William about horses, listened to Mary's serious questions about ranching, and somehow found the patience to answer Elizabeth's endless whys about everything from cattle breeding to weather patterns. Even little James, usually shy with strangers, had taken to following Owen around like a devoted puppy. On their fourth evening at the ranch, after the children were asleep, Sophia found Owen sitting on the porch, whittling a small wooden horse. "For James," he explained when she joined him. "Thought he might like something to remember the ranch by when you continue to Santa Fe." Sophia sat beside him, the evening breeze cool on her face. "That's very thoughtful." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Owen spoke again. "If you don't mind my asking, what awaits you in Santa Fe? Your sister has room for all of you." "My sister's husband owns a general store. She wrote that they could use help running it, and there's a small house behind the store where we can stay."
Sophia sighed.
"It's not ideal, but after Thomas died, there weren't many options." "It takes courage to make this journey," Owen observed. "Most widows would have remarried quickly rather than strike out on their own." "There were offers," Sophia admitted, "but they were men who saw 5 children as a burden to be tolerated for the convenience of a wife. I wouldn't subject my children to that." She looked at him curiously.
"What about you?"
"Why no wife after all these years building this successful ranch?" Owen's hands stilled on the carving. "I was engaged once about 8 years ago. Caroline was from back east, visiting relatives in Santa Fe. Beautiful, educated. I thought she'd fallen in love with me and this life." His jaw tightened. "Turned out she'd fallen in love with the idea of reforming a rough rancher, turning this place into some Eastern fantasy. When she realized I had no intention of changing who I was or how I lived, she returned to Boston." "I'm sorry," Sophia said softly. He shrugged. "It was for the best. A marriage built on false expectations would have made us both miserable." His blue eyes met hers. "What about you and your husband? Was it a good match?" "Thomas was kind and steady. A good father." Sophia smiled at the memories. "Not a passionate love match like in novels, but a partnership built on respect and shared goals. I miss him every day." "Your children are a credit to both of you," Owen said. "They're well-mannered and remarkably resilient." "Thank you." Sophia felt warmth spread through her at the genuine compliment. As days turned into a week, Sophia began to notice subtle changes in herself. The perpetual worry lines between her brows had softened. She laughed more easily. Even her body, constantly tense from vigilance, had relaxed into the rhythms of ranch life. She also couldn't help noticing Owen more the way sunlight caught in his dark blonde hair, how his hands moved competently over repairs, the gentle way he lifted James onto his first pony ride. Most of all, she noticed how he treated her not as a helpless widow but as a capable equal whose opinions mattered. On the 8th day, as they sat at dinner, William asked the question Sophia had been avoiding. "Do we have to leave, Mama? Can't we stay here?" The table fell silent. Sophia felt heat rise to her face. "William, that's not appropriate. Mr. Blackwood has already been more than generous with his hospitality. But he likes having us here. Don't you, Mr. Blackwood?" William persisted. Owen cleared his throat. "I have enjoyed your company immensely," he said diplomatically. "But your mother has plans that are important for your future." Later, after the children were asleep, Owen found Sophia on the porch again. "I apologize for William's outburst," she said immediately. "No need. It was a natural question." Owen leaned against the porch railing, studying her face in the lamplight spilling from the window. "But it does raise a point we should discuss. You've been here over a week now. Are you still planning to continue to Santa Fe?" "Of course," Sophia said, though with less conviction than she intended. "My sister is expecting us." "I see." Owen seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "And is there a particular timeline for your departure?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Sophia took a deep breath. Mr. Blackwood. Owen, please. After all this time. Owen, she corrected with a small smile. I'm not sure what you're asking. Neither am I, exactly. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less sure of himself than she'd ever seen him. I just know that the thought of you and the children leaving feels wrong somehow. Sophia's heart quickened. We can't impose on your hospitality indefinitely. It's not an imposition. This place. It's been just a ranch for a long time. With all of you here, it feels like a home. His eyes held hers steadily. I'm not proposing anything improper, Sophia. I respect you too much for that. But I am suggesting that perhaps there's no need to rush your departure. And my sister? Our plans. You could write to her. Explain that you've found a temporary situation that suits the children while you consider your options. The unspoken offer lingered between them, not a declaration of love or a marriage proposal, but something more tentative and perhaps more honest, a chance to see if what was growing between them could flourish. I'll think about it, Sophia promised, her voice barely above a whisper. That night, sleep eluded her. She thought about Owen, his steadiness, his kindness, the way her children had blossomed under his attention. She thought about the lonely road ahead, the uncertainties of starting over in Santa Fe, dependent on her sister's charity. More than that, she thought about the slow awakening of feelings she believed were buried with Thomas. The warmth that spread through her when Owen smiled, the comfort of his presence, the growing trust that defied her careful nature. By morning, she had made her decision. After breakfast, she asked Owen if they might speak privately. I've been thinking about your suggestion, she said when they were alone in his study. I believe it would be beneficial for the children to have some stability before continuing our journey. If your offer still stands, we could stay for a while longer, perhaps a month, while I write to my sister and sort through our options. The smile that broke across Owen's face made her heart leap. I think that's a wise decision, he said, restraining his obvious pleasure to a dignified nod. For the children's sake, of course. Of course, she echoed, unable to suppress her own smile. The next few weeks transformed both the ranch and its inhabitants. Sophia's organizational skills brought new efficiency to the household, while the children integrated themselves into ranch life with enthusiastic energy. William shadowed Owen daily, soaking up knowledge about horses and cattle. Mary formed a close bond with Marisol, learning to cook traditional Mexican dishes. The younger ones thrived with the freedom to explore safely and the stability of regular routines. For Sophia, the transformation was more subtle, but no less profound. The constant worry that had been her companion since Thomas's death gradually eased. She rediscovered parts of herself that had been submerged beneath grief and responsibility: her quick wit, her enjoyment of good conversation, her appreciation for beauty in simple things. Most evenings found her and Owen on the porch after the children were asleep, talking long into the night. They discussed books they'd read, shared stories of their childhoods, debated the future of the territory, and gradually revealed the deeper aspects of themselves that weren't visible in daylight responsibilities. I never thought I'd feel this comfortable with anyone again, Sophia admitted one evening as they watched distant lightning illuminate the mountains. After Thomas died, I was so focused on survival that I forgot what it was like to simply enjoy someone's company. And I had forgotten what it was like to look forward to the end of the day, Owen replied, his voice low. To have someone to share thoughts with rather than just work and weather. Their eyes met in the darkness, and Sophia felt the shift between them, the quiet acknowledgement of feelings growing beyond friendship or convenience. Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. The simple touch sent warmth spreading through her, both foreign and familiar, like returning to a home she hadn't known she missed. Sophia, he began, his voice rough with emotion. But the moment was interrupted by a small voice from the doorway.
Mama?
I had a bad dream. Owen released her hand immediately as they both turned to find James in his nightshirt, rubbing sleepy eyes. "I'm coming, sweetheart," Sophia said, rising. She glanced apologetically at Owen. "Go," he said with a gentle smile. "We have time." And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift he had given her, the luxury of time to heal, to consider, to feel without pressure or desperation pushing her toward decisions she wasn't ready to make. As the agreed-upon month drew to a close, Sophia found herself increasingly reluctant to think about leaving. She had written to her sister, explaining their delay due to wagon trouble and their temporary stay at a ranch, but had been vague about future plans. One afternoon, as she hung laundry with Mary, her daughter broached the subject directly. "Are we still going to Aunt Harriet's, Mama?" Sophia smoothed a sheet before answering. "That was our plan." Mary pinned a pillowcase to the line with deliberate care. "But plans can change, can't they? When circumstances change." Sophia looked at her eldest daughter with new eyes, seeing not just the responsible child who had stepped up after her father's death, but a young woman forming her own observations about the world. "Sometimes they can," Sophia acknowledged. "What are you thinking, Mary?" "I'm thinking we all seem happier here than we've been since Papa died." Mary's directness was one of her finest qualities. "And Mr. Blackwood looks at you the way Papa used to." Heat rushed to Sophia's cheeks. "Mary, it's true. And you look at him the same way when you think no one's watching." Mary's expression grew serious. "Would it be disloyal to Papa if we stayed? If Mr. Blackwood became something more to us?" The question struck at the heart of Sophia's own private struggle. "No," she said finally. "Your father wanted us to be happy and secure above all. But Mary, there's been no proposal or declaration between Mr. Blackwood and me." "It would be presumptuous to assume, Mama," Mary interrupted with the exasperation only a 12-year-old could muster. "He built a picket fence around the vegetable garden yesterday because you mentioned once that you always wanted one. He's teaching William to ride and carving toys for James. He sits on the porch with you every night talking about books and ideas instead of going into town with the other men." She raised an eyebrow. "Adults can be very slow sometimes." Sophia couldn't help laughing at her daughter's assessment. "Perhaps we are," she admitted. "But these matters are complicated." "They don't have to be," Mary said with the simplicity of youth. "Not if you both want the same thing." That evening, when Owen suggested a ride to show her a particular view at sunset, Sophia accepted with only a slight flutter of nerves. He helped her mount the gentle mare he'd selected for her, his hands strong and sure at her waist. They rode in companionable silence through pastures golden with late summer light, up a gentle slope to a promontory overlooking the valley. Below them, the ranch buildings looked like a child's toys, neat and orderly against the vast landscape. "It's beautiful," Sophia said as they dismounted, and Owen spread a blanket for them to sit on. "This is where I come when I need to think or make important decisions," he told her, settling beside her. "My father brought me here when I was 10 years old and told me that someday all this would be my responsibility. It terrified me then. And now I understand what he meant about the weight of it. Not just the land and cattle, but the people who depend on this place for their livelihood. The legacy of it." He turned to face her fully. "Sophia, I've been trying to find the right words, the right moment." Her heart quickened. "For what?" "To tell you that meeting you and your children has changed everything for me." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "I've built this ranch, made it successful, but it wasn't until all of you arrived that I realized what was missing. Life. Family. Purpose beyond just work and duty." "Owen, please, let me finish before I lose my nerve." He took her hand. "I'm not asking out of convenience or practicality, though God knows you're the most capable woman I've ever met. I'm asking because I've fallen in love with you, Sophia Miller. With your strength, your devotion to your children, your mind, your heart. I've fallen in love with the woman who threatened to shoot me when we first met and who now trusts me enough to let me teach her son to ride. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. Owen, I know it hasn't been long. I know you had plans, a future mapped out. But I'm asking you to consider a different one. Here, with me. His grip on her hand tightened slightly. I'm asking if you might stay not as a guest, but as my wife. If you could see yourself building a life here, raising your children in this place, growing old with me. The tears spilled over now, running freely down Sophia's cheeks. You want to marry me? And take on 5 children? I want to marry you and be a father to those 5 remarkable children, if they'll have me. A shadow of uncertainty crossed his face. Unless I've misread everything and you don't share these feelings. Sophia laughed through her tears.
Oh, Owen.
Mary told me I was being slow, and she was right. She squeezed his hand. I do share them. I've been fighting them, telling myself it was too soon, that I couldn't possibly be falling in love again. But the truth is, I started falling the moment you appeared on the horizon when we needed you most. The joy that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Is that a yes? It's a yes, she whispered. Yes to staying, yes to building a life here, yes to becoming your wife. Owen pulled her gently into his arms, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home after a long journey. His kiss was tender yet passionate, speaking of promises and possibilities, of a future they would build together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I should warn you that I intend to spoil those children terribly. They'll be insufferable, she agreed with a laugh. And I may not always be the easiest man to live with. I'm stubborn and set in my ways after so many years alone. Fortunately, I'm equally stubborn and quite practiced at managing difficult personalities. She touched his cheek. We'll learn each other, day by day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, they sat together planning their future practical details of marriage arrangements, how to tell the children, adjustments to the house to accommodate their expanded family. We should write to your sister, Owen said. Invite her family to visit once we're settled. This place is room for extended family too. The thoughtfulness of the suggestion touched Sophia deeply. You truly want this? All of us, with all our complications and noise and needs. More than I've ever wanted anything. His expression grew serious. I know I can never replace Thomas, especially for the children. I wouldn't try to, but I promise to honor his memory by loving his family as my own. Tears threatened again at his understanding. You're a good man, Owen Blackwood. And you, Sophia Miller, are the woman who makes me want to be better. When they returned to the ranch house, twilight deepening around them, they found all 5 children and Marisol waiting anxiously on the porch. Well, William demanded before they'd even dismounted. Did you ask her? Owen laughed, swinging down from his horse and lifting Sophia from her saddle. I see there were no secrets kept. Marisol said you were taking Mama to your special thinking place, Elizabeth explained. And that meant you had important things to discuss. Sophia looked at the housekeeper, who merely smiled and shrugged. Children know everything anyway, Marisol said. Why pretend? Owen gathered the children around them. Your mother has done me the great honor of agreeing to become my wife, he announced. Which means, if you're willing, I would become your father. There was a moment of stunned silence before reactions erupted, William and Elizabeth cheering, Sarah clapping her hands, James launching himself at Owen's legs. Only Mary held back, watching her mother's face carefully. Sophia went to her eldest, taking her hands. Are you all right with this, Mary? Truly. Mary's serious expression softened. Papa would be happy knowing we found someone to love us as he did, she said with wisdom beyond her years. Then she smiled. Besides, I've always wanted a brother who could teach me to ride like a cowboy instead of a lady. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Owen rode to Santa Fe to arrange for the marriage license and invite the local minister to perform the ceremony at the ranch. Sophia wrote to her sister with the news, receiving an enthusiastic response and a promise to visit in the spring. The ranch hands, far from being dismayed by their boss's sudden family, embraced the changes with good humor. Several of them proved to be surprisingly skilled at entertaining children, particularly Hank, the oldest cowboy, who delighted the younger ones with elaborate whittled animals and tall tales of his adventures. 2 months after the broken wagon had stranded them in Owen's path, Sophia stood in what was now their bedroom, wearing a new dress of pale blue silk that Owen had ordered from Santa Fe as a wedding gift. Marisol fussed with her hair, weaving late summer wildflowers into the dark strands. "You are beautiful, Senora," Marisol declared, stepping back to admire her work. "Senor Owen will not be able to speak when he sees you." A knock at the door revealed Mary, resplendent in a new dress of her own, her face glowing with excitement. "Mama, everything's ready. The minister is here, and Mr. Blackwood, Owen is waiting." She came forward to take Sophia's hands. "You look like an angel." "As do you, my darling." Sophia kissed her daughter's forehead. "Are your brothers and sisters behaving?" "William's shirt is already untucked, and Sarah has grass stains on her stockings, but otherwise, yes," Mary reported with sisterly frankness. Sophia laughed. "Then it's perfect." The ceremony took place under the sprawling oak tree in the yard, with the mountains as a backdrop and the late afternoon sun casting everything in golden light. Ranch hands and neighbors formed a small gathering of witnesses as Sophia walked toward Owen with Mary at her side and the other children forming an impromptu honor guard. Owen's face when he saw her was everything Marisol had predicted: wonder, joy, and a momentary inability to speak that made the assembled guests chuckle appreciatively. The minister's words were traditional, but the vows Sophia and Owen exchanged were their own promises, not just to each other, but to the children standing witness, pledges to build a family together on foundations of respect, honesty, and love. When Owen kissed her as his wife for the first time, the cheers from their assembled family nearly drowned out the pounding of Sophia's heart. She had not expected to find love again, certainly not in the wilderness of the New Mexico territory with a man who had appeared like a mirage when hope seemed lost. The celebration afterward was joyous music from a ranch hand's fiddle, dancing in the yard, a feast prepared by Marisol that combined traditional Mexican dishes with American favorites. James fell asleep in Owen's lap before the cake was cut, while William proudly helped serve the adults, his chest puffed out with new responsibility as the rancher's son. Late in the evening, as lanterns glowed against the deepening darkness, Owen pulled Sophia aside for a moment of privacy behind the barn. "Happy, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Happier than I believed possible," she admitted, reaching up to touch his face. "And grateful beyond words for a broken wagon axle." He laughed, the sound rich and warm in the night air. "I've been meaning to tell you something about that axle." "What about it?" "When Miguel and I examined it closely, we realized it hadn't just broken from strain. It had been cut partway through before you started your journey, probably by someone back in Kansas City who thought to strand you somewhere remote where you'd be vulnerable." Sophia gasped. "But that's fortunate," Owen finished, "because if it had broken anywhere else along your route, I wouldn't have found you." He pulled her closer. "Some might call it providence." "Or destiny," she whispered against his lips. Their kiss was interrupted by giggling, and they turned to find Elizabeth and Sarah spying on them from around the corner of the barn. "Girls," Sophia scolded, though without real heat. "Marisol said to tell you it's time for the children to go to bed," Elizabeth reported, not looking remotely sorry for the intrusion. "And that you should come say good night," Sarah added. Owen smiled at his new daughters. "Tell Marisol we'll be right there." As the girls scampered off, he turned back to Sophia. "Duty calls, Mrs. Blackwood." "It always will," she said, taking his hand. That's what family means. I wouldn't have it any other way. He kissed her once more, briefly but with promise. We have all the time in the world now. Together they walked back toward the house that had transformed from a solitary man's dwelling to a family home in the space of a few short months. Inside, their children waited for good-night kisses. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, the beginning of their shared life. For Sophia, who had once faced an uncertain future with nothing but determination and 5 dependent children, it felt like a miracle this home, this man, this second chance at happiness. The broken wagon that had seemed like disaster had led her exactly where she needed to be. And as for Owen, the lonely rancher who had built an empire with no one to share it, he had finally found what all his success had been missing: a family to love, a purpose beyond work, and a partner to walk beside him through whatever lay ahead. Years later, the story of their meeting would become family legend: how Sophia came with 5 children and a wagon that wouldn't move, and Owen fixed both, finding his heart's desire in the process. Their children would tell it to their children, and the Blackwood Ranch would remain a haven for generations, all because of a broken axle and the 2 people brave enough to recognize that sometimes the most unexpected detours lead exactly where you're meant to be. As they tucked the children into bed that night, their first as a complete family, Owen and Sophia exchanged a look of perfect understanding. This was just the beginning of their story, and they would write each chapter together, day by day, year by year, building something even more precious than a successful ranch, a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. In the years that followed, the Blackwood Ranch prospered and grew. Sophia proved to be not just a devoted wife and mother, but a shrewd business partner whose organizational skills and fresh perspectives enhanced the ranch operations. Owen's experience combined with her innovation created a formidable team that expanded their holdings and influence throughout the territory. The children thrived in their new life. William, under Owen's patient tutelage, developed into a skilled horseman and cattleman who eventually took over the day-to-day ranch operations. Mary's intelligence and determination led her to pursue education in Santa Fe, returning with modern ideas that helped advance the family business. Elizabeth discovered a talent for numbers that made her the natural bookkeeper for the ranch, while Sarah's gentle way with animals led her toward veterinary interests. And James, the baby who had first won Owen's heart, grew into a charming young man whose gift for storytelling made him the family historian, preserving their remarkable beginning for future generations. 2 years after their wedding, Sophia gave birth to twins, a boy and girl they named Thomas and Caroline, honoring both their pasts while celebrating their shared future. Owen proved to be as devoted a father to his biological children as he was to those he had chosen to love, making no distinction in his affection or expectations. The broken wagon that had once stranded Sophia and her children was never discarded. Owen had it restored and placed near the entrance to the ranch as a reminder of how their family began, a symbol of how something broken could lead to something beautiful when the right hands came along to fix it. And on summer evenings, long after the children were grown with families of their own, Owen and Sophia could still be found sitting together on the porch, hands intertwined, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold, and rose grateful for a chance encounter on a dusty road that had changed everything. For in the end, it wasn't just the wagon Owen had fixed, or even the broken family finding its way after loss. They had fixed each other, healing wounds neither had fully acknowledged, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either could have built alone.